Today, we're talking about turning your passion into a career. If you want your passion to actually succeed, you need to build a solid brand foundation. But here's the thing, I'm not talking about choosing the right logo, the right fonts, and the right color. That's not what you need right now. What you need to understand is the psychology behind why people turn their startup passion projects into fully fledged careers while others don't. If you listen to these 4 steps, I guarantee that you can turn whatever you're passionate about, whether it's singing, selling clothes, making videos, or even being a social influencer, into a successful job. Now, before I get into the 4 steps, I'm going to give you something critically important to know that no one even thinks about when it comes to success. And what I'm talking about is the secret to what a brand actually is and what it means. Now, when I say the word brand, you probably think of a logo or a company name. But a brand is so much more than a symbol or a title. A brand is a mark behind the product you're selling. It clearly articulates a couple of things. That includes an issue in today's society, why your brand exists, how your product solves that issue, and even why your brand is different from others in the same or similar field. People also tend to have this misconception that brands are just for companies. That's totally not true. Everyone has their own personal brand, even yourself. All the decisions you make, the things you talk about, the topics you care about, all make up your own personal brand. Have you ever thought about why certain people are just generally more liked than others? It's because they know their brand of who they are as a person, and they can clearly articulate that brand to other people. Now, while a logo and name are important, if you can't clearly identify what your brand is, your passion will always be doomed to stay a hobby, not a movement or a profitable brand. People don't just follow passion projects. They follow solutions to problems they feel. And that leads us into step 1. What problem made you start caring? With any passion project or hobby or anything you want to start, you gotta understand you want something from other people. You either want their physical assets, like their money, or their non-physical assets, like time. These are 2 hard things to get from someone because at the end of the day, people are always going to think about their own interests over yours. So knowing that they're going to choose their own interests over your own interests, you got to understand if you want to make an ask of them, you got to ask in their own interests. With that in mind, you need to turn your brand back at them and make it about them. The best way to do this is to identify a problem in today's world and create common ground between you and other people. Every single person has problems and they want them solved. If you could find common ground between the problems people have and the problems you have, it puts you on the same team, and being on this perceived same team as someone else will at least lead to them hearing you out and hearing about your brand. Now let's talk about an example of this. Let's say you're passionate about making music and you want to build a career as an independent artist. You need to know and think about what you want from other people. In this case, it's probably streams and followers, which is a non-physical asset. Now, find a problem that you have that leads you to make music, or a problem that people have who also listen and love your same genre of music that you make. Make that your core principle of your brand. For example, you love making music, but you struggle with anxiety and you use music as therapy. So you create songs for people who feel isolated or anxious, but don't know how to express it. You've now identified the issue. People are dealing with mental health struggles, but with mainstream music, it doesn't speak to their specific experience, or they feel alone in what they're going through. Which leads us into step 2, why your brand exists. The why of your brand is extremely crucial because it drives all decisions you make and everything that comes out of your brand. This is where storytelling also comes in. People love stories, and stories resonate with people. A person is more likely to remember stories and the relatability of that story rather than someone just straight up telling them about the moral of the story. This is the exact same with the brand. If you just tell someone you sing songs, it won't be as impactful as telling the story of how you started singing songs, from the idea of the brand, of where it started, and where it is today. You need to tell the story as it ties into the issue. Lead people into your brand, starting with the problem they relate to. You've already built value there. Then turn that interest into how you also had that problem and you found a solution to it, with that solution being your songs. And with that, you've just answered why your brand exists. Going back to that musician analogy from before, if you're making songs and already established that you're making songs for people who want to release from their anxiety, tell them about your story with anxiety. Tell them about how you started out in a place of anxiety and how your type of music helped you through it, and now you are set on making music to help other people who are in the same position as you were in. Now this leads us into step 3. Now this step is critical because this is where your passion becomes value. You tell someone straight up the ins and outs of your brand, including the process by which you solve the issue and how you directly can help them with their issue. You speak to the needs of the person you're trying to sell and tell them how supporting your brand is in their best interest. This is also tricky because you need to understand not every single person has your issue, but some people do. You need to identify who has this issue and write down how you can help them in terms that speak to that person. Now let's go back to the musician example. Let's say you decide to make indie music because you believe that's the best way to help with your cause, which is anxiety. A lot of people fall into this misconception, including myself at times, that your product is so good that every single person will love it because it's you, but that's simply not true. Nobody is the exact same person, and not every single person likes everything. Now you may be thinking, there are popular artists out there that also sing songs that are known by basically everyone, which is true, but trying to chase down every single person's approval will not lead to the results that you want. Now, let's say you make an indie song that blows up and everyone knows it. That's perfect because you'll get exposure and listens, but you aren't building a solid fan base that can grow into loyal supporters because of your brand, which is what you truly want. Instead, what you're getting is a bunch of casual listeners that will maybe listen to your song every so often, but won't ever hear from you again and certainly won't listen to your other music, and that's not what you want. You want people who listen to your one song and keep on listening to you and your other songs. So in order to make this group of loyal supporters, you need to curate your product to their interests to get on board with you and your brand much easier. This gives them a desire to stick around. Now this leads us into step 4. Why you? This is the kicker. Now, if you're making music, you have to realize there are so many people out there that also make music. But despite there being so many musicians out there, people still are able to find out how to make their passion of being an artist a career. With this step, I'll tell you how you don't become one of the many artists that try to make music but people don't often listen to, and instead become one of the few that people consistently love and listen to. Now think about it. There are a lot of singers out there, but what's causing people to choose one artist over the other? When people turn on Spotify or Apple Music, people have a choice from a wide range of artists, including Drake, Taylor Swift, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, Queen, etc. The reason someone chooses to listen to one artist over the other is because they have something that I like to call the X factor. When you define your X factor, that makes you different and it sets a creative edge. Think about Sabrina Carpenter. She started her career singing at a young age, but it never took off until recent years. The reason she took off isn't necessarily because her singing drastically improved. It's because she added something so much stronger. She had something that answered why you should choose her songs and concerts over every other artist in her genre. Now, if I gave you this prompt for Sabrina provides singing and, you'd probably say sex appeal. This is because it's her X factor. She made it so clear what her creative edge was, it became a part of her brand and made her clearly definable to other people. She answered the question of why you should listen to her by saying, I provide songs that talk about topics of sex appeal that no one talks about like me. I also wear outfits and talk about subjects people don't, and she sticks with that as much as she can. She made it simple and clear and laid all of her cards out on the table, answering the question of why her. And this lays out a very clear choice for the listener. You either decide if her music is for you or it isn't. That clarity cuts through the noise because it allows you to understand exactly what value you'll get from her. So when her music reaches someone who has a desire to relate to those themes, it's easier to get them to say, yes, I'll listen to your music over other people's. Now, those are the 4 key principles of building your brand. Once you figure these out, then you can start with a logo and get a name as a cherry on top. But until you solve these 4 steps, your brand will be nothing more than a directionless idea and won't gain the traction that you hope it will to become a successful project that you hope it becomes. Now, you may be thinking, this is all good, but people actually have to know your brand exists in order to use all of these 4 steps, which is exactly why in my next video, I'll be talking about the key tips to marketing your brand. If you got value out of this video or think you'll get value out of my next video, make sure to like and subscribe and learn how to turn your passions into a career.